joining Caitlin and I on such a very stormy morning. As, as I am the special projects coordinator at JC Muir, so I have the absolute pleasure of working with Caitlin. And today I'm going to present to you Creatures of the Muck. So as you can see in the first slide that Caitlin is showing, when I was a little kid, I was fascinated by the ocean. And when I went to the beach, I always had my head underwater, like that little boy up in the bow of that boat. And the mask on, I was always looking around, and everything I saw was so absolutely exciting to me. I was like a kid being in a candy store. Also, as a kid, I loved playing in the mud, and my mom would get so mad at me. Hey, you can switch to the next slide.
Next slide.
Next slide.
Okay. There we go.
But luckily for my job, I spent the majority of my career playing in the mud, studying invertebrate animals that live at the bottom of the ocean. And because it was my job and I was getting paid to play in the mud, my mom no longer got mad at it. She was actually quite happy. Caitlin, could you switch to the next slide? So, can you tell me what invertebrates are?
All right, so right here, guys, put in the chat box what you think invertebrates are.
And I have another question for you. So when you think of a scientist, what do you think a scientist is? I bet you didn't think a scientist was covered in mud like that.
Scientists have some pretty cool jobs.
Excellent. They have no backbone. You're absolutely correct. And so in this slide, what animals look very familiar to you?
All right, so if any of the critters in the picture kind of looks familiar to you, write down what you think that critter looks like in the picture. So maybe you see something that looks like a fish or something else. Put that in the chat.
These are all animals that live in the mud. Caitlin, could you change the slide?
Sure.
So here are some bigger animals that live not only in the sediments, but also on the sediment surface. So you have polychaete worm, the first one, you have a crab, you have a sea star, you have a lobster, you have clams, and you have a shrimp. These are just a few examples of animals, larger animals that live in the mud.
Oh, we have one answer that they recognize the crab, clam, shrimp, sea star, and lobster in the pictures.
Excellent, great.
Rose, do you want to have them put their favorite as well right now, or do you want to do that another time?
Oh yeah, actually that would be wonderful if they put their favorite, because next I'm going to tell them what my favorite is.
Perfect. That's good timing. So if you have a favorite benthic invertebrate or mud critter, put that in the chat. Ooh, we have sea star. That's one of my favorites too. All right. So next slide, Rose.
Yes, please.
Okay.
So my most favorite group, and the group of invertebrates that I have spent my career specializing in, are polychaete worms. Now I think that they are so absolutely beautiful that I really cannot understand why people just don't like worms at all. These worms are segmented. They have separate segments, and they are divided into two major groups. One is called the errant polychaetes. These are the polychaetes that are very active swimmers and crawlers and burrowers. And then you have the other polychaetes that are sedentary. And these are the ones that build tubes. You can see on the bottom of the slide, there is a polychaete, and just the head of the polychaete is sticking out of the tube. That tube that polychaete makes, the common name of this polychaete is called the ice cream cone worm. And the tube is so amazing because it is one sand grain thick. And that is how the polychaete lives in the sediments. And the head sticks out, and that's how it feeds, by collecting particles that are floating in the water. So, does anybody agree polychaetes are beautiful?
I think they're very different looking. Now, why do they make the tube, Rose?
Because they are burrowed into the sediments and they live in a tube, so they are referred to as sedentary polychaetes because they spend their life living in the tube.
All right. Very cool.
And I think that's the last one. So now I'm going to show you some live animals that I collected for you today. Speaking of, I'm going to change my screen because I have a live polychaete right here for you to see. And Caitlin's going to direct.
Oh, that's perfect, Rose, actually.
So,
wow.
This is really a cool worm. This is one of the errant polychaetes because it is a very active burrower. And if any of you guys go fishing, you can use this polychaete as bait. And its common name is called the bloodworm. Actually, if you go by some bait stores, there'll be a sign out front that'll say bait worms for sale. I'm sorry, bloodworms for sale. So if you've used this polychaete for bait, actually it's pretty cool because it has a very long proboscis, which is like their tongue. And oh, I just shot it out. And at the very end of the proboscis are 4 little pinchers. So if you're using it as bait, when you're putting it on your hook, you got to be really careful that you don't get a slight little pinch by those 4 little pinchers. Pretty cool, huh? Well,
wow. It's so cool that it did that on camera too.
I think that's pretty cool. Okay, guys, thanks very much for putting up with looking at my most favorite group. Next, we're going to move on to a group that I'm sure you know about. These guys definitely live in the sediment. And how many of you eat clams?
If you do eat clams, put in the chat box.
Yes, please. And by chance, would you happen to know what a clam and a tree have in common?
So if you think you know what a clam and a tree have in common, put an answer in the chat. The one that Rose is holding does give you a clue.
Can you see the
Yep, yeah, we can see that very well actually. So we'll give you a few seconds to, if you have any ideas, put in the chat. 1, if you eat clams, and then 2, if you think you know what a tree and a clam have in common. That sounds like a riddle.
Like a riddle, and you're probably saying, "Oh, wait a second. One lives buried in the mud, and the other one lives, on land."
Yeah.
So I'm going to tell you the answer.
Oh, wait, hold on. 1, never tried clams, and 2, oh, I'm not sure if they got their second answer. We'll wait. Oh, not sure. Not sure. So go ahead, Rose.
So the rings on the clam shell just like a tree, they tell how old the clam is. Just like the rings on a tree. You can count the rings and see how old the tree is. Same thing on a clam. So the oldest rings are at the top of the clam, which is called the umbo, and the newer rings are right at the bottom.
So it grows outward.
Yes.
Cool.
So these are the clams that are harvested for human consumption. I personally don't eat clams myself, but depending upon local conditions, they can grow to a harvestable size in about 2 to 3 years. So this is their harvestable size.
Gotcha.
Here's another very productive, marketable clam that is fished off the New Jersey coast, and it's called a surf clam. If you eat any kind of chowder or fried clams, this is the clam that the meat comes from. The surf clams are the largest bivalves that are found in the North Atlantic. They're the largest clams. They grow up to about 9 inches. This one right here is only about 6.5. And these clams are noted for living in the sediments up to 35 years.
Wow.
I know, pretty amazing. How many of you eat mussels? Mussels marinara. My husband loves mussels marinara in red sauce with extra garlic. He's a mussel eater. Now this is a variety of mussels that you can eat, but this is called the rib mussel. This mussel is buried into the marsh sediments. It buries itself and attaches itself by these very thick missile threads. These you cannot eat, but they're very, very good at filtering pollutants out of the seawater. So this is a very important species to be living in the marsh, but you cannot eat these.
So Rose, does the rib mussel filter more efficiently or effectively than the blue mussel?
They are both. They filter more efficiently and they filter a lot more water per period.
Okay, great.
So I have another very, very common invertebrate that you will find on the beach at low tide. And I'm going to turn the camera again. You guys know what this might be? How's that look, Peyton?
Yep, it looks great. So if you think you guys know what critter that is, its full name, even if you don't know the full name, that's okay. If you do though, please enter in the chat what you think that is. Oh, there's another one.
They're not being very cooperative in coming out of their shell, Caitlin.
Camera shy.
They are. Caitlin had a very important question to ask you about these guys.
Oh yes.
Can you
So
see? Can you see?
Yeah, we can see them for sure. Oh, here they come out a little bit. Let's see though if people know in the chat and enter into the chat what they think this critter is. And then we'll ask you your second question. I'll just give you a few seconds. We'll watch them in the meantime.
Oh, he's coming out more.
There we go. All right. Oh. I think we just lost Rose a little bit. Hopefully she pops back in. So what Rose was just showing was oh, that's a good guess, is a hermit crab. So hermit crabs will use those shells later on. The animal that occupies it first and actually grows with it is a mud snail. So that was a mud snail. And then Rose had a question for you guys to think about, and that is if you think snails in general have eyes. So give that a thought. And if you think snails have eyes or don't have eyes, put that in the chat. Okay, everybody, I think we're back.
Everyone, it's like right there when the snail was coming out of its shell. I lost internet. Oh no.
Flickering on and off. Oh no. Yeah, so the storm's a bit windy right now, so if that happens again, I think we'll just kind of, do you want to just see how far we can get, and if it happens again, we'll kind of call it quits?
Yeah.
Okay. So yeah, I think some of the heavy rain and winds are happening right now, so. Oh, wow. Got it right.
All right, guys, we're just going to move along here because you guys must know what this is, right? It's a blue crab. And you always need to be careful of the pincers because they're very strong and powerful, and they could really cut your finger pretty good. So I have a question for you. Do you think that these crabs are good swimmers?
All right, so put in the chat if you guys are at the computer, if you think they are good swimmers, crabs, the blue claw crab. Oh, we have an answer, yes. So Rose, they say their answer is yes.
Do they know why?
Oh, I don't know. Why are they good swimmers? Why do you think?
So the reason why they're good swimmers is because of this last pair of legs. This last pair of legs is modified for swimming, and they're almost like paddles, which is why they can both crawl along the bottom because of their other legs that help them crawl. But it's this last pair of legs that are paddles, which really helps them like swim, and they can swim really fast through the water. So I like eating blue crabs, but only in a crab cake. I'm not a fan of like steaming crabs and having to pick the shells. I like mine already picked in a crab cake, please. Oh. Caitlin, we lost.
Oh.
What?
Seems like it's going on in and out.
Yes, it is.
Do you want to show one more critter? Oh.
This is another mud crab that you see a lot crawling around the marsh. And you would think that this big claw right here is to help it get food, but it's actually not. This is a male, and the males have one huge claw on either the right or the left side. They could have it on either side, but the big claw is mainly for warding off other males during mating season. And so on the surface of the marsh, you see these guys crawling along really quickly, and they make these very deep burrows. And they're very fast crawlers too.
Yeah, we can even see that claw, even in the, I know you don't have a lot of light in there right now, Rose, but we can even see that claw from here.
Yes. Oh, you know what? Let me turn the flashlight on my phone. Well, this is what you call improvising, right?
Yep.
Now, add some indirect light. So, everybody knows what these are, right? Sea stars. And do sea stars have eyes?
Hmm.
Hmm,
Do you want them to put an answer in the chat, Rose?
please.
Okay, so we talked about snails having eyes. Now, do you guys think that sea stars have eyes? If you think yes or no or don't know, put an answer in the chat. And the sea star that Rose is holding is not alive anymore, right?
It's,
It's
yes,
just the shell on the outside. Answer says, I'm not too sure.
So actually, sea stars do have eyes. On the tip, on the very tip of each arm, you're going to see like a little, when you see a live one, you're going to see a little red dot. And those are referred to as eye spots. Naturally, they can't see like we can see, but they're photoreceptors, and they're very sensitive to light and dark. Another, now this one is really hard to see because it's dark, but this is a sea urchin. Sea urchins you'll find crawling around rocks because there are, rock jetties at the beach. That's where you will find sea stars, and you'll find these sea urchins. And this is a very common sea urchin off of our coast. It's called the purple sea urchin. And you could touch its spines without getting really hurt. And what's really cool about sea urchins, see that white dot in the bottom?
Mm-hmm.
That's the mouth. And called Aristotle's lantern. And it protrudes its mouth out of the shell. And as it's crawling up the rocks, it's eating algae. Here. So here's a question. How do you think sea stars and sea urchins move? What mode do you think they have for locomotion? How do they move?
Okay, so next question of sharing your thoughts on how you think they move and get around the bottom of the bay, of the ocean. How do you think they move? Now, just also so you guys know, sea stars and sea urchins, they're in the same group of creatures. They're kind of like relatives to one another, which is kind of cool. I know they don't look a whole lot alike, but they do have a lot in common.
Yes. And like the sea star also has spines, just like the sea urchin, except they're just a lot smaller.
Yeah, tinier spines makes it more feel like rough rather than like spiky.
Yep. These guys, like Caitlin said, they're in the same group, and they're referred to as echinoderms. Echinoderms and spiny, tiny animals. So how they move, let me just say, they also eat the same thing. They also eat algae. But the sea star is amazing because the sea star is strong enough that it wraps its arms around one of these clams, and it's able to drill a hole in the shell, invert its mouth parts into the clam, and they have these very strong digestive juices that will dissolve the innards of the clam. So the muscles release, the clam opens up, and the sea star eats the clam. Now, both of these do crawl, and they crawl by means of 2 feet. That's how they crawl. They have little 2 feet. If you look at the base, the bottom of a sea star, see that groove right there? That's where all the 2 feet come out, which is how the sea star and the sea urchin move along the bottom. Do you guys have any other questions you'd like to ask?
All right. So, Rose, is that all the critters? Do you want to open it up to any questions?
Yes, please.
Okay. Yep. Yeah, we'll open it up to any questions right now about sea stars, snails, clams, polychaete worms, anything that Rose showed and chatted with us about today. I also wanted to say thank you for your patience. During the storm, I almost lost connection during the talk here today too. So we thank you guys for your patience as we were able to get Rose back online.
Oh, I know. Thank you very much for staying online while I sort of went through our power outage here. And
yeah. It's windy.
I also have one other question for you, and that is, the next time you put your head underwater, what do you think you'll be thinking of?
All right. So if you go put your head underwater, what do you think you'll be thinking of when you're at the beach or maybe on the boat or kayaking? You put your head underwater, what are you going to be thinking of?
I certainly hope that you'll be thinking of all the beautiful, wonderful, marvelous creatures that live in the muck and on the surface of the muck. And so you're right, all the creatures underwater.
Yep. Very good. All sorts of different things. All right. Well, we'll give a couple of seconds for any other final questions for Rose before we sign off.
The snail is just starting to come out of the shell.
Oh, of course. He was shy before. All right, guys, I think that's going to do it for us today. So thank you for joining us during this crummy weather. And thanks for participating in our creature feature, especially if you have over the past couple of weeks. We hope you learned a lot. And we hope you have a great rest of the summer and stay safe today, okay? Oh yeah, no problem. Thank you. Oh, my lights just flickered also. I think it's a good time to sign off.
Today, and thank you again for your patience, and thank you for enjoying a little bit of time listening to me talk about all the animals that I really love. Thank you.
Oh, no problem, Rose. Well, thank you for your time and sharing what you love. So, all right. Well, bye, everybody. Thank you so much. Have a good one.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
Thanks, Caitlin.
Oh, no problem, Rose. Have a good one.
You too. Be safe there.
Thanks. You too.